We then... Now, she is... Now, if you step forward, Angus, this here is all one piece of material. You see she's covered from the knee up to the shoulder, and if we turn her round like this, she's got her pleats. She's got her pleats just like me. Some of the stewards here in the castle, Rob, is anybody wearing their kilts today? Sadly, none of the stewards are wearing their kilts today, and you'll see their kilts like knife-edge pleats in the back. That's a product of the British Army. They over-engineer everything so it doesn't break. We never ever stitch these in because these have to be folded out for other things. Now, great thing about the Highlander, when they're going to London, they're going there basically to fight for a kingdom. They're going to fight for a kingdom. The British Army at the time, a lot of Americans, you'll recognise the red coats and stuff like that, all heavily equipped. We Highlanders, very lightly equipped. We carry everything here. What we have here is, Emily has this deep pocket here. On this side, Emily has another deep pocket, and then on the back here, we have a bag. This bag here would be used if she catches a haggis. She can put it in there till it's time to kill it, cook it, eat it. So this here is all one thing. And the English artists sketched these, and we also know that this not only is our carry bags, this is our sleeping bags. The British Army always carried what they called a sleeping bag, a sleeping mat. It was a blanket rolled up and tied. What Emily and I would do at night, we would find somewhere to sleep under, we would undo this from our coats, and then what we do is, we'd open this up, like this, put it over the head, like so, tuck your elbows in there, Angus, there, tuck that one in there, Angus, here, like this, lift your chin up, and then we would go to sleep at night like this. She's covered from the knees to the top of the head, and if we turn her round again, she's covered from the back of the knees to the top of the head. We've still got these pleats, do that, still pleats, brilliant. When we wake up in the morning, we would simply take this off and just wrap it there. We are so manoeuvrable and lightweight, it's unbelievable. Now, we weren't in England just so some artists could sketch how to look good. We were there to fight. They never got to London, but 120 miles is not too bad. The Scots, as usual, we start to fight amongst ourselves. The Jacobite leaders couldn't take any action, and the Highlanders started to march back north. Now, when we came back north, we gathered for the last time on the 16th of April, 1746 at Drumossie Moor, commonly known as Culloden to this day. There, the Highlanders lined up to fight once again the British Army. We weren't fighting the English army, there was no such thing, we were fighting the British Army. At the Battle of Culloden, there was something like 5,000 Highland clansmen, and only 3,500 were actually Scottish. Over on the other side in the British Army, 9,000 strong, 7,000 of them Scottish to a man. The Scottish outnumbered the whole of the Jacobite army. The Scots outnumbered the Scots, so to speak. But on the battlefield, one of the things that we're famous for, of course, is the weaponry that we carry. Now, in Gaelic, we call this antarge. Antarge, in English, it just means the board. It's a shield. Now, the British soldiers seeing the Highlanders for the first time were rather surprised that a civilisation in the 18th century are still using shields in the days of cannons, muskets, bullets and bombs. This isn't really to protect you. It does protect you. That is not its only function. You'll see the leather knotwork there. This is Celtic knotwork. This is just a homage to our Pictish ancestry when the Romans called us the Picts. It was the Romans that called the Caledonians the Picts, from the word pictus, which is Latin for painted. We used to paint our bodies in these patterns and fight the Romans. We're very proud in the Highlands of Scotland. When the Romans say anywhere, they go Vini, Vidi, Vici. We came, we saw, we conquered. But when they came to the Highlands, it was Vini, Vini, oh, we'll go away. Two reasons. First reason, of course, it's always raining and the Highlanders are mental. Secondly, there's a leaf flea called the midgie, and that's what put paid to them. Now, We get this, and on the back we've got deer skin. If you put your left hand through there, you're just your left hand like that, right through there like that, to that way, yeah. And then hold it there like this. So what Emily can do is, Emily can use this to protect herself against swords and bayonets and stuff like this. It's very good, but it's also very lethal. If Emily was to unscrew the front of the boss, we take this wee brass knob out, and then hidden in the back of the charge, in this leather pouch, is this lethal metal spike. This is then screwed into the front, Emily. No wonder she's smiling. This is screwed in. She would use this to punch her opponent in the eye, the mouth, the throat, or even the stomach, and twist it, like so. Now, she would also use what's called the bidag, or commonly called the duck. And the duck is basically just another word for a dagger. Emily, your fingers might not be able to hold that, but what they would do is, they would hold it, I'll help you there, just behind the charge as well. So they can stab with that and then lift it up and stab you with this as well. Very clever. Now, their most famous weapon perhaps is this here. Now, this is commonly called a claymore, mistakenly called a claymore. In Gaelic, there's no such word. It's called a claithmore. Claithmore means big sword. Now, the basket there protects us at the front of guards to trap blades, and it's not for fencing, it's not for pokey, pokey, pokey. This here is hacky, slashy, punchy, crushy. Now, you just hold that there, Emily, like that, and just rest it against your shoulder like this. So on the battlefield, Emily would be punching, stabbing, and slicing. She would be like a combine harvester on the battlefield. Now, sadly, on the 16th of April, when we lined up to fight the British, some of the Highland clansmen, Emily, took their swords and they stabbed them into the heather beside them. Some of them took an target and threw it to the ground beside them, and before they charged in against the British Army, they unveiled the most horrifying tactic weapon ever. Many of them, not them all, used what's called the Highland Charge, my own clan included. What they did was, Emily, they reached under their belts, their plaids, and they took their belts off, and they pulled the belts off like that, and then they give a wee shake like that. They step out of the filly moor like this, and they put them in a nice tidy pile behind them. Now, as you know, we don't wear anything under the bottom half of the filly moor. Some of them would then rip off their shirts, don't do it, they would rip off their shirts, picked up their weapons, and they charged into the British Army bare naked. Now, I'm very patriotic, but I have got to tell you this. If I was a red coat soldier and 3,000 naked versions of me ran towards me, I think I would run away, to be honest. Now, before Emily gets back to her family and before I finish my story, I'd like everybody to give Emily a big cheer and a big round of applause. Lined up to fight the British that day. 16th of April, it was raining, it was snowing, it was wind, it was the start of British summertime, of course. The battle lasted less than 60 minutes. My own clan, the Robertsons, the Clan Donaghy, we were the first to charge on the right flank of the Highland Army. Sadly for us, we were the first to fall. Not at the hands of any English guns, not at the hands of any Sassenach Lowland Scot guns. Believe it or not, we were the first to fall at the hands of fellow Highland clansmen, that of Campbell, the Clan Campbells. The Campbells had popped up from the Whinniat Dyke. They got us more or less from both sides. The Highlanders, of course, Campbells, were in fact allied to the British Army. It was a civil war, after all. We were the first to fall at the hands of fellow Highlanders. Now, after the battle, an English soldier commented in his letter home about the piles of tartan that were left in a row, and he couldn't understand it. He'd obviously not come up against any of the naked clansmen, and people asked, why did he take it off? Many people have suggested it's so the British soldiers couldn't grab onto something. Perfectly plausible. Some people have said it's very heavy and it's unwieldy. I can tell you I've been wearing this since I was 3 years old, 40-something years I've been wearing something similar. It's not unwieldy or heavy, there's nothing to that. Truth of the matter is, this is a Highlanders' only piece of outer clothing on most occasions. Today, we wear the kilt only on ceremonial occasions. Football matches, rugby, weddings, funerals. We wear it for special occasions. The Highlander wears this every day. It's like painting your house in a Gucci suit. You simply don't do it. They don't want blood, they don't want muck, they don't want it ripped or torn, so they simply leave it behind the battlefield lines in the hope they return to pick it up. Sadly, hundreds of them did not return to pick these up. Any prisoners that were mocked up in the battlefield were brought first here to Edinburgh Castle, where we stand and sit at this very moment. Directly beneath us, it's not open to the public, is the castle vault. Many of the prisoners were kept in here before finally being marched to London at the Tower of London. Whilst they were at the Tower of London, locals were invited in for a small charge, I suppose, to view the savage Scots. This is at a time the savage Scots were part of a united kingdom, part of a united parliament. Now, some of the Highlanders were then given British redcoat uniforms, and they were given guns that were not loaded, and they were given their tards and the Clive Moor. They were then forced at gunpoint to pose for a painting for the King George of the day by the court painter Edward Landseer. That painting still exists to this day. The Highlanders, of course, are on the verge of defeat, showing the magisterial greatness of the British Redcoat Army. When that painting was finished, they were disarmed and they were shot to a man, as were most of the other Jacobite clansmen. Worse was to come for the Highlands of Scotland. In August of 1746, the British government introduced an Act of Proscription which now bans the wearing of tartan unless you join up as a Scottish soldier in the British Army. It was now illegal under the Act of Proscription to carry a Clive Moor and target. Even wearing a blue bonnet or wearing a dirk, a baidag, was now illegal unless you joined the British Army. Playing the bagpipes was now officially an act of war. It was a criminal offence. Now, I've heard some terrible pipers, but I wouldn't say death was the best solution for them. But perhaps the most despicable part of the Act of Proscription was the banning of the native language of the Highlands, the banning of the native language of Scotland at one point, that of the Gaelic. To ban one's language, of course, is to try and wipe out an entire history, an entire culture. This Act was in force for nearly 40 years before finally being rescinded. Thankfully, after 40 years, the Highlanders had moved on, and many of them joined up en masse as British soldiers. And sadly for the Americas, this is where the trouble begins, when the Highlanders start to take the lands from the local natives over there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed our presentation here in the Great Hall. I will be available for the next few minutes. If anybody would like to approach, ask any